Today is our 50th episode of Give It a Nudge show. So we're turning the tables on our host, Steve Grace, to talk about why you actually started the Nudge Group. So over to you.
Well, 50 episodes. Crazy, huh? And Dayna, your first episode presenting, which is exciting. The first of many, I hope. This is why I started the Nudge Group, to get you to present a TV show. Why did I start the Nudge Group? This is a question I have been asked many times, so I've got a good answer. And I will try and make it a little more succinct than normal because it tends to go on longer and longer the more I say it. But I had a couple of recruitment businesses before, as you well know, because you worked with me. And I had sold my share in the last one, and I was a little bit over recruitment. I was a little bit disillusioned with recruitment and I didn't really want to do it anymore. So obviously I started a recruitment company. So I took some time off and I thought a lot about what I wanted to do. And after coming up with a whole bunch of ridiculous ideas that I realized I had no idea about, I thought I need to find a way to make recruitment work for me because that's really what I know. I mean, 20 years, I'm not going to throw that away. There's got to be 10,000 hours of that, right? So, and I don't have time to do 10,000 hours of anything else. So I, having started 2 companies, or 3 companies actually, there's a third one that I never talk about that didn't go very well. I love startups, and you know this, and I've always liked recruiting for startups, but I also knew that startups and recruiters did not typically like each other, including, some of the experiences I'd had myself. It hadn't worked very well. And there was a number of reasons for that. And I knew what they were from my perspective, but I didn't know what they were from a startup founder's perspective. But I thought, well, this is a space that I enjoy. This is a space where I felt we could add real value. And it's a space that I felt needed recruiters. They really don't have a lot of experience typically of hiring people. They're usually marketing people or they're salespeople or they're technology people. So there had to be a way to make it work. So I went out and interviewed a few founders that I knew. And they gave me a ridiculously long list of things they hated about recruiters, which was a lot longer than I had anticipated.
Usually is.
Yeah, it was surprisingly long. And so we took that list and we took the list that I knew, and that was the blueprint. Let's work out how we can get rid of all of these issues. And that was the blueprint for Nudge. And away we went. And it's changed and evolved quite a bit, but ultimately the main reason for starting it was I needed to do something. I love startups. I know what I'm doing in recruitment, so there had to be a way of bringing it together, and that was how it started. And I wasn't sure, as were you not either, when you started, whether it was going to work. It could have been a complete disaster. Luckily, here we are, 50 episodes and 2.5 years later, and we're still hanging on. So
pretty impressive. So you kind of flipped it on its head, I think, in a way, in terms of the traditional recruitment model. Tell us a little bit about that. How have you turned it around from most recruitment models?
So I think it's evolved even more in the last 2.5 years. So I think when we started, we were purely a recruitment business, and we had some changes in the way that we did pricing and the way that we charged. We sort of wanted to make sure that we had a lot of education around startups. And I think the unique thing about startups and scale-ups, and we can talk about the difference between startups and scale-ups if you like later, but and when they become a scale-up, because that's a question I get asked all the time, is that they require very different types of individuals than typically a corporate company or even a government organization or whatever it be. And I think that person changes during their journey. The person you hire at the very beginning to the person you hire when they first get some funding to the person you hire as they scale, it changes continuously. And I think one of the biggest problems with recruitment in the space was that recruiters, it wasn't that they were finding the wrong people, they just hadn't been educated or hadn't really put any thought into what kind of person outside of the skill set. If it's a marketer, it's a marketer. If it's a technical person, it's a technology person. It's so much deeper than that. And I think where we've ended up now is that what we've realized is founders, they don't just want to hire people. They genuinely need help, just like anyone starting a business. Even as if there's more than one founder, it's still a very lonely place. And now we meet 5 to 10 new founders every week all over the world, which is so interesting for a start. And we talk to them about what they're trying to achieve. And it's not about recruitment. Recruitment is actually the end product. And yes, we still do recruitment, and it's technically the only thing we charge for. But this show and many other things that we do are trying to solve their problems.
Yeah.
And by solving their problems, they want to grow. And then they recruit for us. So we've kind of flipped it in the way that we don't go in and say, hey, we're here to recruit. We go in and we go, what are you trying to achieve? And it could be they want to get some funding. They need to raise some money. It could be that they need to raise their employee brand. It could be that they need to create an employee share option plan. It could be they want to create a workforce plan. It could be so many different things. And we've built this ecosystem of, I guess, trusted suppliers is probably the best word, that can help them. And we can introduce them to whatever it is they need, or some of the things we can do. And we don't charge anyone for any of that. It's all very much a free service. And the end result of that is that they succeed, and then they grow, and then hopefully they come back to us.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
So over the last 2.5 years, obviously, we've had huge success, and we're now at, I think, 12 staff. We're operational in the UK, America, Europe, Asia. How do you think success has come so quickly?
I've got no idea. It's nuts. It's just sort of happened. And I hate saying that because I would really like to say that it was a really good strategy and, it was very careful planning. But it really has just, you've known me a long time. I'm not an overly strategic person. In fact, we had our first strategy session ever in the 20 years that we've known each other, 2-3 months ago?
Yeah.
And I think we needed to do it because of the pace we were growing. But really, we were just trying to solve that problem. We were just trying to help as many founders as we could. And I think what I probably didn't realize, and I don't think you did either, because obviously you were the first employee nervously joining me on just a couple of weeks before the pandemic, which was beautiful timing. But we didn't really know if it's going to work. And I think what we found is that actually we were right. Founders were crying out for help. They just didn't think they were getting it from traditional recruiters. Obviously, there were some out there, but generally, recruiters were treating them the same as they were treating other organizations. And again, I don't think that's anyone's fault. It's just a lack of education, a lack of thought. No one had really put a specific focus on that space. So when we did do that, and there wasn't really many others doing it, there were a couple, but it wasn't a popular thing. And that timed at the same time with pandemics, huge amounts of funding, this sort of startup culture that's exploded in Australia. A lot of it was timing, and a lot of it was COVID forcing companies to go online or to people to buy online or people to move to SaaS products because they weren't in the office and all those sorts of things. It's like a perfect storm.
Yeah.
And then you combine that with the fact that founders talk to founders, and it went like wildfire. As you remember, I remember when we had that first lockdown, and we sort of nervously rang each other and went, hey, how are you today? Hey, how are you today? And we had no idea what was going to happen, right? And it did go quite quiet for about 3 weeks. I think that was all it was. Maybe.
Was it that long? I don't even know if it was.
I think it was. And that's when we came up with the idea of this show, right?
Yeah.
And it was a little quiet. Everything just went sort of, no one knew what was going on, right? And everyone was just sort of looking around nervously.
Yeah.
And then it just went boom. Because all of these companies suddenly had money because they were expanding, because no one was going to the office and they needed to move from traditional to cloud, or they needed to move to SaaS, or everyone was buying stuff on e-commerce. No one saw that coming.
Yeah.
And I think you combine that with the fact that we just happened to be in the right place at the right time. That's really what's happened. And then same thing with the international expansion. That was never a plan in the first year.
Not straight away.
I was thinking 4 or 5 years down the track. But then suddenly all these startups, or scale-ups as a lot of them, wanted to go to UK. They wanted to go to the USA. They wanted to go to Singapore. They wanted to go Hong Kong, South Africa, Canada, all over the place. And they wanted us to help them do it. So off we went.
And here we are.
and here we are in matching outfits.
You weren't meant to bring that up. And that was the other thing I was going to say. I mean, we often talk about sometimes these serendipitous moments, things are sort of falling into place without having this strategy. And I think it's a lot more than fate. What do you put it down to, really?
I love the fact you've asked that. And I didn't know you were going to ask that.
I know.
And I love the fact that you asked that, because you'd asked me 3 weeks ago. I'm not sure how I would have answered, but I listened to a podcast by Gary Vee. And I've never listened to Gary Vee before. And I'll tell you the reason I listened to Gary Vee. I was explaining nudge to someone else. And I was explaining how we tend to give, and then hope to get back. And that was our methodology that we'd sort of come up to and evolved to. And he said, just like Gary Vee. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, that's Gary Vee's thing. That's what he talks about. And I was like, oh, didn't know that. He goes, you got to go and listen to some Gary Vee.
Okay.
So I went and listened to a Gary Vee episode. I listened to a couple. And he talks enormously about manufacturing serendipity. And serendipity comes because you put yourself out there. And I think that's what's happened to us. There has been a lot of serendipity, in terms of things like when Balance the Grind came our way, and this new venture that we're in the sort of negotiations to purchase at the moment.
Yeah.
Two acquisitions. I never thought we'd make any acquisitions either.
Not in the first 2 years.
No, and the first ones proved to be incredibly valuable, but I think it's just the simple fact that we have been very open-minded. I think because we started a company that wasn't following the rules and was trying to be almost, forcing difference, looking for everything we could do differently, saying, okay, well, we've always done it that way. Let's not do it that way. What other ways can we? Did that with literally everything. That has just created these moments of serendipity. I can't spell that word, but let's go with opportunities.
I put spell check on mine as well.
Yeah. Like God, we're talking and not spelling. But and I think that's what's happened. I think it's just it's not just me. It's everyone in the company has come in with this mindset. And I think I've said to you in the past, one of the things that's fascinated me, if the first 7 or 8 people that joined Nudge had worked with you or I in one of my previous companies, all found that joining was quite a big shift in the way that we worked. And it took everyone 2 or 3 months to get their heads around that. So we were forcing ourselves to change in everything that we did. Yeah. And that has sort of created opportunities that you would never have thought of. I think that's how it's sort of all come about.
Definitely. So true. I mean, even the way that, we've both been in recruitment for over 20 years now, and what I do on a day-to-day is completely different to what I would have done, 10 years ago.
It is.
Like, it's not the same at all.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't feel like my previous companies felt the same. Yeah. In terms of day to day, they were different, but they're very, very similar. Yeah. There's been nothing similar about this. It's been a massive learning curve for me and you and everyone who's joined. And we saw that with I think probably Carly when she joined. She saw huge change, and she didn't struggle with it, but I think she was just like taken aback by how much change it was. Yeah.
Hers was the biggest because she was government.
She was doing government, which is about the other end of the world from where we are. And she wasn't sure whether she was going to love it, and she loves it now. And that you sort of see that moment with everyone that joins Nudge. And we've had a couple of people who've joined who haven't necessarily worked with us before. Same thing. It takes about 3 months. Yeah. There's like this sort of light bulb moment where it just all comes together. And they go, oh, my God, this is so different. But it's so much fun because it's so different. And I've been doing the same thing for so long.
Yeah. Taking the risk.
Oh, yeah.
To get the reward.
Yeah, I think so.
And so on that, obviously you've been hands-on recruiting forever.
Does feel like that sometimes.
And an amazing relationship builder. But where do you see your position changing or shifting or evolving as the company continues to grow? What do you want to do?
What do I want to do? I want to do this show. I love doing this show.
Influencer.
What do I want to do? I think we talked about this in the strategy session. We're trying to get away from doing so much hands-on recruitment. I still enjoy doing it. I actually was doing some real late-night stuff last night, which I hadn't done for a few weeks, and I kind of got a bit of a kick out of it. It's weird, messed up. But I think what I'm loving doing more than anything is the amount of founders that I'm meeting. So I'm meeting, 5 to 10 founders every week all over the world. That's fascinating. That's just hearing their stories, getting them on the show like we have been, and doing this is awesome. Yep. That's that real true storytelling. What I've done a lot of is speaking, which I hadn't really done before. Mm-hmm. And luckily, I did do a public speaking course during my time while I was trying to work out what to do. I don't remember any of it, but it must have helped.
Tell me this.
No, I didn't tell anyone. I wanted you to think I was a natural. Yeah. But I did do a course, and it gave me a little bit of confidence. It was awful, that course, because they made you get up and speak the whole time. But I've really enjoyed that. I've really come to enjoy standing up and talking about different things and giving my opinion.
You love talking about anything and everything.
I'm not a talker normally.
Oh, come on.
I'm such a thinker. So I think that getting out there and spreading the Nudge word, but I think what I've also enjoyed is building all the ecosystem and being able to add real value to these people. So when they come and they say, oh, I'm really trying to do this, I don't know how to do it, we have an answer. Yep. So continuing to do that. And I really love the international part, apart from the fact that I haven't been able to fly and I work all night instead. Yes. Apart from that, but I like seeing the differences in the countries. Mm-hmm. And it's quite fascinating to know And I don't know if I've told you this. What I've discovered is that Australia has the lowest recruitment rates in the world.
Right.
And what I didn't realise when I was going into these other countries and quoting our rates, why everyone was so enthusiastic. So enthusiastic because, for example, the US, 25% is quite normal. For the UK, it's really 20% and above. And we're charging 15, 18 here, right? So I was wondering why everyone was so excited about this. So I've learned, learning and the way
We're changing our model slightly.
I was actually on a call with Jason the other day, and we were pitching to this client, and she said, "Oh, what are your rates?" And I was still in Australia mode because I think it was only 7 p.m, so I hadn't quite switched into my UK mode. And I saw it coming out of coming out of my mouth. I could see Jason's face just dropping, and she goes, "Oh, they're so reasonable," and Jason's just like this.
Oh.
So you've got to kind of remember those sorts of things.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think what I want to do more of that. I want to spend more time talking to founders and helping them. I want to do more of the stuff that I guess is free to some degree. And less of the recruitment, I guess. I love the business development side. I always have.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't. So it makes sense for me to do more of that.
Keep doing that. Definitely.
Yeah, I know you don't particularly love that side.
No, but we haven't really needed to do any.
We haven't.
Crazy.
It's been extraordinary.
Yeah.
It has been extraordinary. But I'm sure there will come a time.
There will come a time.
And then I'm ready.
Then you're ready. Excellent. Well, this is a question we ask a lot of our clients who are on the show. But I guess for attracting recruiters to work for our business, obviously we've got so much work on. We would love more people in our team.
We would.
Which would be wonderful across all areas of, Australia and Singapore and the UK. So why do you think people would want to work for Nudge?
Well, one accepted yesterday, by the way. I haven't told you that, but so that's exciting.
Yay.
It's very exciting. A tech recruiter too. Why would someone work for Nudge?
Yeah.
I think partly some of the reasons we spoke about. I think if you're a recruiter and you're good at what you do, but you're kind of feeling it's a bit samey, this is an opportunity to really throw it around and find a whole new way of doing it.
Yeah.
I think the closeness that we work with our clients is quite extraordinary. One of the things that always frustrated me about recruiting for large organizations, banks, insurance companies, government, those kinds of things, was the lack of value we could add. You're dealing with a portal, the jobs come through, you send the resumes, you're not really able to advise or consult. We get such a close relationship with them. We become so embedded within their whole strategy. You get to take all that knowledge that you've learned as a recruiter, and you've got someone that actually wants and sees the value in that. If you think about some of our previous roles, so many of our clients, we try and tell them our opinion. They really don't care.
No.
They just do not care. They've got their opinion, particularly if you're dealing with big people teams. They think they know best, and that's fine. They can do. But it's a bit frustrating because when you have been doing as long as we have, and you have done the 10,000 hours, technically we are an expert, right? So we do have something to add, and not being able to do that, I always found that very frustrating. You can so do that here. You can so do that. And I think that's particularly enjoyable. I think when you're doing accelerated hiring and you're hiring with companies that are far more open-minded about the kind of individuals, the actual process of finding and telling people and explaining companies they haven't heard of, again, that's storytelling. If you like storytelling and you like talking, this is definitely the place for you. If you like matching resumes to job specs, this is a terrible place.
Yeah, not going to work.
And the biggest thing for me and anyone that wants to join us, and I've said this many times, you've got to really care for these people. I've always felt you needed to care in recruitment. Ultimately, it's people's livelihoods you're dealing with, and I know a lot of people don't see it that way.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with founders, it's accentuated so much more because this is this person's dream, right? And you're a key part in whether they're going to succeed. Some of the people they hire early on, and when they're hiring lots of people later, if they get that wrong, it can be disastrous for them, and they might not get a second shot. Whereas a corporate, they've probably got the deep pockets to just sort of brush it off and replace. These guys often don't. So if you don't really genuinely care about the founders and what they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it and take the time to understand that, then you would hate working for us, because that's probably the biggest part. It takes us longer to fill a job because we go on a journey with them, and I hate that expression, go on a journey. It's such a startup phrase, but the role evolves as we recruit it, because no one's really quite sure what they want in these earlier stage companies. And I think that's such an enjoyable process. Some people might find that frustrating.
It can be, especially if you've kind of been going down a path for a few weeks and then all of a sudden it gets flipped on its head.
Which does happen quite a lot.
It does happen. But it's also really exciting because I think that, as a consultant in our business, being able to give that information back to your clients and talk them through what that change might need to look like and what the market's demanding and what, just being that that real consultant back to that business is
you feel like you work there.
Yeah.
You feel like you work at that organisation.
Yeah, definitely. So I know that the Nudge Group's going to continue to grow. Are there any kind of big plans or new releases or anything that you want to tell us about?
New releases. There's an acquisition happening we can't talk about.
Oh.
Although we probably could no, let's not talk about it in case it doesn't happen. That would be terrible. So let's leave that alone.
That'll need to be a big edit.
Yeah, big edit out. I think the training arm is something that I'm really, really keen to push this year. And for anyone who, I think we've talked about this. It's kind of two parts to that. I want to create an online portal because I spend, and so do you, spend so much time educating founders and candidates, and that's not necessarily overly effectively time spent because we're doing it one at a time, right? So if you take candidates, for instance, there's a lot of people who want to move into startups and they think it's ping pong and beanbags and free beer, and it's none of those things, right? No. So it's educating candidates what the difference is between joining a company at seed to joining a company at Series A or Series B or Series D, which is the different sort of stages of funding, or a company that's maybe going to an IPO or expanding internationally. They're completely different kinds of individuals. And candidates don't understand where they fit because they don't necessarily or haven't necessarily had the time to reflect on what they like doing and where that would fit in a startup scale-up journey. So we spend a huge amount of time doing that with them.
Yeah.
So to be able to put that online, to be able to help lots of candidates do that so that they can sort of be more targeted in the roles they're going for and hopefully have a lot more success and not put themselves in the wrong companies, that's massive. So that's one thing I think that I'm very keen to push. And then on the founder side, as we've talked about as well, it's that educating them about hiring, accelerated hiring. Again, what kind of people they should be looking at. I think the number one mistake I see founders make is they've got 5 people and they go and hire this rock star out of Salesforce and think they're going to be a genius. And they're terrible. They're completely the wrong fit. This guy out of Salesforce is great for a company that size, but they can't go into an environment where there's so much ambiguity. They just don't know how to handle that.
Yeah.
So that's big. The training thing. I think that will just make it'll speed up success for everybody. So that's important. Balance the grind. I love Balance the Grind. Our favourite acquisition, because it's the only one. We've got big plans for that. We've been lucky enough to get Heyo join us when we purchased Balance the Grind, and it's just been a godsend. And we've produced so much content, this and all the other content. Gosh, we produce more content than I ever dreamt we would do.
Amazing.
And now we really want to help other startups produce their own content because it's the way forward. I mean, I can't believe I've only just learned about content marketing. All those years of wasted phone calls when I could have just been doing content marketing. So the media arm and really growing that, we've got a lot of focus on that this year, a lot of focus on the UK this year, and probably July, really going to start pushing Singapore. I've already sort of stepped into that market and incorporated there, but having such interesting conversations. It's a little startup hub, but they're completely different mindsets. It's like a different ecosystem. So that's going to take a bit of time, but I'm really keen on that market. I like
say July. It'll end up being February or something like that.
It might be tomorrow. Yeah. Who knows? Is there anything else?
Anything else?
Oh, we've been asked to write a book. I don't know if we're going to have time to do that.
Yes, you choose your own adventure book. Tell us about that.
So I've been approached to write a book. I really want to do it. I'm dyslexic, so I'm an ideal candidate for it, right? I'm terrible at spelling. I can't write sentences in the right order. So, yeah, let's write a book.
Become an author.
I love the idea of it. I just don't know if we're going to have the time. So we're having those conversations. I really, really sort of would love to do that. It's just going to be a time thing. Heyo has said he'll help me. So basically, he's going to write it.
He'll do it.
Put my name on the bottom. But I don't know. That would be something I would love to do because I think we could reach a much wider audience.
What will it be about? What's it?
I think, this is what we're talking about. They've given me a whole bunch of topics which are all quite serious, and I've tried to explain to them that I'm quite a comical person, and it should probably be quite comical. I am very funny, and I think we should do a funny book.
Yeah.
So I think it will. If I do a book, it'll be about trying to, again, educate a wider audience about what startups and scale-ups are like, because I just think that the lack of education there is massive. And I don't see this movement of people starting their own businesses changing. And I think as we've spoken about many times, people have, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, changed what they're looking for in their careers. I think people are looking for more meaning, and that doesn't mean they want to save the world or do non-for-profit. I think they're just looking to do a role or work in an organization where they can see the results of their efforts.
Make a difference.
Yeah. And when you're working for a huge company, you don't always have that. It's not possible.
Quite siloed.
So if people are looking for that, more people are going to start companies and more people are going to work for smaller companies. So we need to start educating them on where they fit, because I think that's probably the biggest lack of knowledge that sits in this area.
Awesome.
Anything else? I don't think we've got time for anything else.
No. Well, just the last one. Why am I the favourite? Edit that out.
Well, maybe you can tell me. Maybe we should tell the story about when you joined and that I found out you bought the cheapest, worst computer you could possibly find because you were worried the business wasn't going to succeed, and you didn't tell me that until 6 months later when we had to get you a decent one.
Well, no.
So is that why you're a favourite? Because of your faith in me?
Yeah, because of my faith.
That's why you're the favourite, Dayna, because you took the risk before anybody else.
Excellent. Good answer. Well, thank you, Steve. I hope you enjoy being on that side of the...
It's really weird sitting this side. It's a completely different set this side. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Pleasure.